Hello, thank you for joining this month's Connect with Control-M session. My name is Trinidad Gaitan, and I'll be facilitating this webinar. Today, we will be demonstrating some new features in Managed File Transfer 920. We have four presenters today from the Control-M support team: Erwin Sanchez, Christian Perez, Cody Belcher, and Jose Luna. We recommend going to full screen mode during this presentation by pressing the full screen button. Please note that this presentation is available via the Files pod at the bottom of your screen. For any questions you may have during the presentation, please post them in the Q&A pod. We will be addressing your questions at the end of the session. Today, we'll demonstrate each of the managed file transfer features you see here, including real-world examples of how you can use them. Afterwards, we'll give you the opportunity to provide your feedback, then we'll take your questions during the Q&A session. For our first feature, Erwin Sanchez will show us how to use MFT's directory sync feature, which provides a method to replicate files between servers, for example, a code repository or sharing data between sites. Erwin, please go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction. On this demo, I'm going to go over the Control-M Manage File Transfer Directory Sync feature. You can use this option to synchronize the contents of a directory according to the source directory. The synchronization is done based on the file timestamps, and also recursive directories are supported. I have created a couple of jobs that will demonstrate this feature. Let's have a look at the MFT connection profile that I have created for this demo. Here, you can see it's a dual connection profile. Host 1 is configured as local CM, which will use the files located locally on the Control-M agent, and is a Windows machine. Host 2 is a different machine configured to use SFTP. This target machine is also a Windows machine. For the first job, let's say that your development team is constantly creating new scripts on your UAT environment that will also be needed on production, and you would like to synchronize this directory to have the same files. On the planning domain, I have created the job MFT sync script files. It's scheduled to be ordered every day, and it runs every hour. Using the connection profile I previously showed, here is the source directory with 5 scripts, and here is the target directory that is empty. We're going to use the synchronize directory option. The following warning indicates that during the directory synchronization, files might be removed from the destination directory, and if you would like to prevent this, you will need to select the option Do not delete destination directory files during synchronization. For this run, I'm going to select it. Let's go and order the job. I'm going to free it and wait to finish executing and check the output once it's done. In the output, we can see that the 5 files were detected and transferred to the target location, and at the end, we can see the message that the transfer was successfully. If we go to the target directory, we can see that the directory was synchronized. Now, if we delete a file from the source directory, let's go back to the job and modify to uncheck the option "Do not delete destination directory files during synchronization." And let's go ahead and rerun the job. we can see that it detected that the file was removed, and if we go back to the directory, it was also removed from the destination directory. Now, for the second job, let's say that your company have a centralized location where receipts are stored daily, and you would like to keep a backup of these files in case something happened. But this folder has subdirectories. Let's go to the planning domain and have a look at the second job, MFT Sync Receipts. This job is scheduled to be ordered every day, and it runs every 2 hours. It's using the connection profile I previously showed. Here is the source directory with its subdirectory, and here is the target directory empty. On the Advanced section, the option Recursive was selected, indicating that the directory will be transferred with all its subdirectories. Let's go and order the job. I'm going to free it, wait for it to finish executing, and check the output once it's finished. As we can see in the output, that 2 subdirectories were detected and all the subdirectories and files were transferred. If we go to the target directory, we can see that the directory and subdirectories were synchronized. All right, this concludes this demo. Thank you.
Thank you, Erwin, for showing how to use the directory sync feature. For our next feature, Christian Pettis will show us how to compress the files in a directory, transfer that compressed file, and then archive it all in one job. Christian will be leading us through this feature.
Thank you for that introduction. In this demo, I will showcase how you can configure a managed file transfer job to utilize pre and post commands. This feature allows you to execute a command before a job is run using the pre-command parameter, as well as after a job has completed using the post command parameter. For today's demo, I have created a managed file transfer job, which will compress some files using the pre-command parameter. Transfer the compressed files to a new host, then archive the compressed file somewhere to be safely stored using the post command parameter. Let's review the job configuration we will be using for today's demo. As you can see, for this demo, I have defined 2 connection profiles, Profile Local and Profile Remote, and I've selected to perform a binary transfer between them. If we look at the contents being transferred, we can see we are looking to transfer a test zip compressed file. Now, let's review the pre and post commands this job will be highlighting. Here we can see I have configured a pre-command that compresses the files from the MFT zipped transfer directory into the test zip compressed file we will be transferring, as well as a post command that renames and archives the file somewhere safe for storage, in this case, the MFT archive directory. Something to keep in mind when configuring pre and post commands is that both commands will be executed on the same agent. In this case, our CLM AUS U8 Q1YL host. So if, for example, we needed to decompress the zipped files we transferred in this demo job on our destination host, we would need to utilize a second job to do so. I will now log in to both of my Control-M agents involved in the transfer so we can review the directory where I will be compressing the files as well as where the zipped file should arrive. Now that I am connected to the agents, if we look in our MFT PrePost demo directory where the compressed test zip file should be, we can see the files for this job have still not been compressed. That is because this will occur prior to our job executing when it is performing the pre-command execution phase. Let's review that now by ordering the job in Control-M and reviewing the job flow. Let's hit the Order button and we should see a message on the bottom that the job was ordered. Now let's go to the monitoring domain. Now that the job has successfully ran in Control-M, let's review the job output to understand when each step was performed. Here, we can see that prior to the transfer initiating, we executed our pre-command execution steps to compress the files for the job. Additionally, we can see our compressed file being renamed and moved to the archive directory following a successful transfer in the post command steps. Let's confirm the post command steps on our agent now. Now that the job has finished running in Control-M, we can see that our testzip.zip file has been successfully compressed and transferred to its destination directory. Furthermore, we can see a new file entry in our MFT archive directory with a dated copy of the compressed files for future review. This concludes our demo on utilizing pre and post commands with managed file transfer. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for showing how to use the MFT pre and post commands feature. Up next, Cody Belcher will show us how to use a single MFT job to transfer files between two S3 buckets. For example, moving information from a single S3 bucket to an S3 archive storage bucket so you can save storage costs. Cody will explain the process to accomplish this.
Thank you for that introduction. In this demo, I will cover the Control-M managed file transfer feature that allows transferring files between different AWS S3 buckets. This feature allows you to use a single Control-M file transfer job to move one or more files from a source S3 bucket to a destination S3 bucket. Previously, this required two jobs and temporarily storing the file or files locally on the Control-M agent host. I will now log into my Control-M web interface and go to the configuration domain so that we can look at the connection profile we will use in this demo. Because I chose to use a centralized connection profile, the web interface must be used for this part. If a local connection profile had been used instead, the Control-M configuration manager could be used. I have defined a single endpoint connection profile and selected S3 under the Connect To section. I left the storage type as default and set the authorization using secret key and access key, which have permissions to both S3 buckets. You can get these values from your AWS S3 admins. Finally, I chose the region where my S3 buckets are hosted. Now let's test the connection profile. Because the centralized connection profile can be used on multiple Control-M agents with managed file transfer installed, we need to select the agent to use for the test. This agent should be able to access the AWS S3 endpoint. We see that the test was successful. Now, let's go to the planning domain and look at the file transfer job created for this demo. I created a workspace called CWCM, which contains the job. We will click to open this. In the job definition, I used the connection profile we looked at earlier for both sides for simplicity, but this is not required. Next, I will choose the source and destination S3 buckets. Finally, I selected the file I want to transfer from the source bucket. Before we order the job, let's look at the destination bucket in the AWS console. We can check the bucket name at the top of the page to verify that we are looking at the bucket we selected as our destination. Below that, we see that we are on the Objects tab, which shows any files uploaded to the bucket. By clicking the Refresh button, see in the table below that the bucket is currently empty. Now, let's go ahead and order this job and look at the results in the monitoring domain. To do this, I'll click Order from the planning domain and choose Order Workspace. Now, I'll click to go to the monitoring domain and open the viewpoint I've created, also named CWCM. By the job turning green, we can see that the job was executed successfully. If we take a look at the output, we can see that the file was transferred. This can be verified if we return to the AWS console and refresh again. We can see our file here as well. That concludes this demo. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody, for showing how to transfer files between two S3 buckets. For the last feature, Jose Luna will show us how to use Destination File Rename to change file names in the destination location when transferring many files. For example, when a vendor requires a specific file name format for all the files they receive. Jose will show us how to accommodate this requirement.
Thanks for the introduction. For this user story, we need to transfer multiple files to our vendor who is in charge of tracking our payroll payments. This vendor requires the files that are being transferred must follow a specific naming convention, so we need to rename them during the transfer to accomplish this vendor's requirement. The original file name has this pattern, prmft file1.xlsx, and our vendor is requesting this new pattern. The prefix payroll underscore the file word underscore a consecutive number of 3 digits that could be 001, 002, and so on, underscore the date and time in the following format, and finally the extension CSV, all in uppercase. Starting with Manage File Transfer 920, there were new features that were introduced with this version. In this demo, we are going to focus on Destination Filename feature, which provides the ability to manipulate file names when transferring multiple files. With this feature, we can add a suffix or prefix, change to capital letters, or add a date or a counter to the file name. So let's start our demo to see more detailed information about this feature to rename the files as needed. This is our Control N Configuration Manager, where we can see we are using latest version of Manage File Transfer, which is 9.20.200. If we go to the Connection Profile Management, we can see we have two single profiles defined, one for the local host and the other for the vendor host. Okay, now let's open our Workload Automation client. This is our MFT job. Here we can see the two single profiles we are going to use for this job. Here on the left, which is the local host, we can list the files that we need to transfer. We will transfer those files that start with PR, which are the ones related to payroll department. So we type the pattern and this wildcard for the source file we want. On the right, which is the remote host on vendor side, we have the location where we need to transfer the files. We can also list this location and see it is empty for now. So we close this window, and in order to access the Destination Filename feature, we go to the Advanced Options. Here in General tab, we have some parameters and actions that can be used if necessary. In Commands tab, we have the option to execute pre or post FTP commands either on the source or target host. Then, here in the Destination Filename tab is where we can do the rename for the multiple files. If you put the cursor over this icon, we can see this feature is only available from MFT version 920 and above. For this feature, we have three sections. Pattern section has to do with the options we can use to rename the files. M parameter refers to the original file name. E parameter refers to the original extension of the file. For these two options, we can do a substring of chars if needed. C parameter allows us to add a counter or consecutive number in the file name, and D and T parameters allow us to add the date and time respectively in the following format. Now, in Find and Replace section, we can replace specific words from the original file name, and in the section at the bottom, we can select if we need to convert any letter to uppercase, lowercase, or to not convert. Going back to our vendor's request for the name convention for the files, we need to rename the original file name from this name to something like this. So let's start with the pattern section. I already have these settings, so let's go through them. First, we need to add a prefix payroll at the beginning. Then we type underscore. Next, we need the Word file. So if we check the original file name, this word already exists in the name. So we can subtract that word specifying an start and final position within the file name. In this case, this word starts from position 6 through 9. So we specify this action as follows. We type underscore again. Then we need to add a counter or consecutive number for the files. So we type C3, which means the number will contain 3 digits. So it will add something like 001, 002, 003, and so on. If we needed a counter with 2 digits, then we should specify C2 instead. We type another underscore. Now we add the day and time as follows. Finally, we keep the extension. Since our vendor needs the files with CSV extension, then we use the find and replace options to find the XLSX string and replace it with CSV. Finally, our vendor also requires all the name in capitals, so we select convert to uppercase option to do this. At this point, we have applied all necessary rules to do the rename for the files as requested. So we hit the OK button to save all these settings. Then we do a check-in and order the job. I will order it on hold to show you really quick the original files in our local host and the information in our vendor's remote host. Okay, so this is the session on the local host. If we execute pwd command, we can see the source directory where the original files are located. So we list the content, and here we can see all the files in this directory. The ones that we need to move start with PR, which are these 3 files at the bottom. Now, if we move to the vendor's host and run pwd command, we can see the target directory where the files will be transferred. If we list this directory, we can see it is empty now. So let's go back to our workload automation client. Then go to monitoring domain. And here we have the job we just ordered, which is in hold status. So we free the job to proceed with the file transfers. We can see the job starts to execute. And now it has just finished successfully. Let's see the job output. In this line, we can see the transfer of the files and also the new name assigned during the transfer to the target directory. Here we can see the first file, and if we scroll down, we'll see the second one and the third one. So now if we go to the vendor's host and check the target location, we can see the transfer files following the convention name requested by the vendor. As you could see, this new feature is very useful to manipulate file names when transferring multiple files. That's it for this user story demonstration. Let's continue with the session.
Thank you, Jose, for showing how to use Destination File Rename feature. On behalf of Erwin, Christian, Cody, Jose, and I, thank you for coming to learn more about the new features in MFT version 920. We look forward to you implementing these features in your ControlM environment. Stick around for the Q&A session where we'll take your questions. But first, you can learn more about the BMC education course, Administering ControlM Managed File Transfer, by clicking the link in the links section below, or you can visit the bit.ly link you see on the screen. Your feedback shapes future webinars. We would appreciate if you will take a moment and answer a few of the questions for us in the questions section below. Please let us know if you'll use what you learned today in your business processes, rate the webinar, provide any comments, and lastly, tell us about any topics you'd like us to cover in future webinars. You can find ControlM on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Links for each can be found in the links section below. You can watch previous webinars on the ControlM channel on YouTube. Today's webinar will be posted there within a couple of days. Let's kick off the Q&A. As a reminder, you can enter your questions on the Ask a Question section at any time.